What's up, folks? Welcome to video number 3 of this series. So, what do I want to talk about today? Okay, I want to talk about safe words. I might go deeper into communication outside of safe words, but yeah, I'd like to talk about safe words at least as a gateway into communication, and then maybe we'll talk about, I'm sure I'll talk about more communication in later videos too. So, a friend of mine, he's an erotic photographer and hosts play parties, and he was kind of a mentor of mine for a little while. But he told me, in his opinion, the most, that the most important skill in a person's sex life is communication. And I really love that. It just rings really true for me. So, well, okay, we'll see if we get to safe words. It feels like I'm going to talk about communication as a larger thing here. Yeah, so what is communication and why is it important? So, if you define, so what's the purpose of engaging sexually with another person? Well, one way you could put it is the purpose, I guess there's a lot of purposes, but the purpose is for both of you to get an experience that you want. And that experience could be so many things. Like, it could be you want to experience great pleasure. It could be you want to experience control. It could be you want to experience surrender. Maybe you want to experience pain of a particular type. Maybe you want a cathartic release. There's so many things that we can want when engaging intimately with another person. And people aren't, well, I was going to say people aren't psychic, which I mean is generally true, but like I do think, we can feel each other very deeply and become effectively psychic. But for the most part, people aren't psychic. And that means that if person A and person B, those are such lame names, let's name them. How about if Cherry and Steve are engaging with each other, and their goal is to both have an experience that they want to have, they're not going to get there accidentally. The only way that they're going to get there is if they're able to communicate with each other in order to get to where they want to get. And that means that you need to be able to let your partner know what feels good and what doesn't feel good. So it's kind of like okay, let's talk about a massage. That's like a pretty good parallel. So if you're receiving a massage, you can receive a massage totally silently and just totally relax and surrender into it. That's a totally valid experience and that has its place. But there's another way to receive a massage, which is communicating. And so if you're touching my shoulder and I say, and you're touching it and it's fine, but maybe I'm like, oh, okay, can you go a little to the left? Yeah, that spot's good. A little harder. Ooh, yeah, that feels good. And then a little deeper. Okay, perfect. So, as the person receiving, I have guided the other person into giving me the exact experience I want by using language and by vocalizing what feels good and what adjustments can be made. And yeah, there's a lot of activities to practice this skill set because I find that it can be hard. Verbalizing can be really hard, especially when you're like in the moment with someone, and if things are like hot and physical, it can feel daunting to break the fear can be, I don't want to break the energy that's happening and speak up. And I've had this in my experience where it can be hard to speak up and ask for what I want. So I guess I'll lay it down this way. It actually looks like I'm probably not talking about safe words today, as a heads up. Because the way I'm doing these calls, I got this idea from Steve Pavlina, who's a personal growth blogger and makes video series, but essentially, like, I have a list of a bunch of things I want to talk about, but before each call, I'll just pause, and I'll say, I want to connect to something bigger, and say, I want to just be able to express whatever content and ideas will be most of service to people today, and I just trust that, like, whatever comes out is the thing. And so I thought it was going to be safe words, and it's taking a slightly different turn. So, yeah, let me give some ideas here. So, let's break it down this way. If you want to get the experience that you want when you're with your partner, um, there's two there's two routes. The first route is can you just enjoy what's happening? Can you enjoy what's happening? Can you surrender to what's happening? And that's just like a general life skill, also, right? Like, if it's raining and you're caught in the rain, you have two choices, essentially. You can either like get out of the rain or like get an umbrella or protect yourself from the rain and change your situation, or you can just enjoy the rain, right? Those are both different skills. And so similarly, and honestly, that like paradigm applies to everything in life. At any point in life, we can either accept what's happening and like appreciate it, or we can make a change. And if you're not going to make a change, we might as well appreciate it. And if you're not appreciating it, you might as well either appreciate it or make a change. But it's not good to be stuck in a situation you don't want to be in. And so, when engaging intimately with another person, same thing. Like, you can either enjoy what's happening and appreciate where the moment is and just savor what's happening, or if there's a change you want to make, you can make the change. And yeah, something I learned from I took a workshop with, her name was Greta Jane. I know her moniker is the Pleasure Guide, and it was a cool workshop. And something she said that really stuck with me is that essentially, like, you should, when in sex or anything pleasure related, you should never be tolerating. You should never be tolerating. And that means, like, if I'm experiencing discomfort, or I'm with a partner and we're doing something I don't like, or like we're cuddling and he or she or they are on my arm, and like my arm's asleep and I don't like it and I'm tolerating it and I'm just waiting for them to move, there's never a good reason to do that. There's never an excuse to do that. Because if I can't appreciate the situation, I need to make a change. And that's what communication is all about. It's about making a change. The ways to make a change, which is effectively different ways to communicate in order to get the experience that you want. So, for one, is physical. You can physically make a change. So let's say that like my partner is rubbing my nipple or something, and it feels good, but they're going a little like too fast. Okay, so I can make a physical change. I can just make a physical change. I can put my hand on their hand and slow it down. Or if I want them to stop, I can put my hand on their hand and move it somewhere else. Or if I want it to stop, I can actually just like turn over and change the scene, and now I'm rubbing their neck or something. Right? So like physically, you can just make the change. You don't have to like make a big deal. You don't have to like speak up. You don't have to say stop. I'm uncomfortable. Like no, you can just make the change physically. Okay, so that's one route if you want to make a change. And I would call that physical communication. Right? And if your partner is attuned and listening, they'll see, oh, okay, I was doing this thing and he's guiding it elsewhere, so I'm going to listen to that and go with that. Then there's making a change in the moment verbally. And there's a lot of ways to do that, and that one, well, I think it's an important skill to learn because, like, at least for me, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, it's been such a journey to unlock my voice, so to speak. Like, to be able to, just anything about speaking and using my voice has required so much work and growth to gain confidence in. So that might be using my voice to, like, speak up for myself, or I might be using my voice to give feedback to a person, or, like, stating my opinions, or, like, even singing or speaking with confidence and gusto. There's some way in which, like, it feels important to liberate and empower the voice. And so that's why I do think it is important to have the skill set of being able to give verbal communication in the moment. So, yeah, in the moment, like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you can say. You can say, essentially, either, like, that feels good, or make a request for change. So, like, if my partner is, again, let's say rubbing my nipple, and I could say, oh, yeah, that feels good. Right, that feels good. Right, so then my partner knows, like, or I could say, like, oh, yeah, that pace is perfect. Then they know what they're doing right. It's like hot, 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 cold, cold, hot, 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 right? So they know it's hot, and they know what type of sensation to hone in on, and they're starting to understand my body and what my body likes. And then if there's something I don't like, you can frame it any way you want, but I think it's useful to, at least in the moment, to frame it as an adjustment and say, could you go slower? Could you move to the left? Could you move to the right? And there's a pretty easy way to practice this with a partner. And I mean, there's a lot of ways, but like, honestly, probably the easiest two ways are one, sit down with a partner, set up a 10-minute container. 10 minutes. I'm going to massage you for 10 minutes. And the goal is, like, yes, the goal is, like, your pleasure. But ultimately, the goal is how vocal can you be as the recipient of this massage? How much feedback can you give throughout the course of this massage? And so it's essentially using massage as a tool to practice vocalizing. That feels good. Yes, yes, no, to the left, softer, harder, right? Because if you can practice it in this container, you're essentially building the skill and the familiarity with each other so that when you're in an intimate encounter that maybe emerges spontaneously or maybe doesn't, but then you already have like the grooves kind of built in to vocalize. And then if you want to take that to the next level and make it more realistic, you could set up a 10-minute, maybe 15-minute container with your partner where you're giving them a genital massage. So exact same thing. Let's say I'm giving you a massage, and let's say you have a male body, and so I'm touching your cock. And for the full 15 minutes, I'm touching your cock in different ways, and I'm exploring in different ways, and all you're doing is you are giving me, telling me what feels good or making adjustments. You say, oh, that feels great. Oh, could you go slower? Could you just pull on my balls a little bit? Whatever the thing is, right? And so there's a lot of great things to practice in that dynamic, but again, the goal is to empower you to learn how to speak up in the moment so that when you're interacting in real time, you have the muscle built. And also, if you do these kind of activities with a partner, you just really get to know, based on feedback, what your partner's body responds to and what feels good to your partner's body. Okay. Is there anything else I want to say? I am going to indeed pause on safe words right now because it's a powerful concept, but I want to actually introduce that in maybe the next video. And I also want to talk about another communication paradigm called the Wheel of Consent, which is really useful. And I'll talk about that in a future video also. So anything else on here I want to touch on? Yeah, I guess the last point I want to make is, so that idea that I just talked about of setting aside 15 minutes to create like a experiment with your partner, I use the word container to describe that. I mean, container, it's a really complex word actually, but like essentially like container being like we're creating an outlined area in time, so with a set amount of time, with set rules and conditions that will create a different experience. That's what I would define a container as. And so this massage idea is a container. We're going to meet for 15 minutes. The goal is for you to vocalize. I'm going to touch you and massage you, blah, blah, blah. And using containers in a relationship is one of the, I should probably do a video on this too in this series, is like the most powerful relationship hack I could ever think of, to be honest. Because think about it, like you spend so much time interacting with a person that like you interact, you do your things, you let it be spontaneous, and then whatever patterns emerge. But if you want to be intentional about growing a skill in a relationship, or growing the relationship itself, or introducing new ideas or concepts or ways of being in a relationship, you can create a container to do that. And so you and your partner are making a container or like a game to play in order to introduce new life into your relationship. And I think it is like far and away the most, yeah, I'll do a whole video on containers. There's so much to say there. But I think it's like far and away the most effective way to be intentional and conscious in the growth and development of a relationship, and in the growth and development of yourself and your partner in that relationship, or partners if it's more than two people. So communication, any last thoughts I want to give? Yes, there is one last thought. The last thought on communication is also, I think it's good practice after any container you're in, or anytime you engage intimately with your partner, to talk about it. How was it? Give reflections. What did you like? Were there things that you didn't like? Were there things that you wanted to say but were afraid to say? Were there things you wanted to do but you were afraid to do? How did it feel? Did you feel any fear, insecurity come up? What was your, just like talk about it. Talk about what happened, and then you can both know, oh, okay, that was great for them. That part wasn't, and then you can make adjustments. But for me, I think as a rule of thumb, there is good reason to not talk about experiences if you always over talk things. Like that's a habit that I'll get into with my partners. We talk about everything, and so sometimes it's nice to have a sexual experience and not talk about it. But I think as a rule of thumb, it's always good to reflect on a container or an experience, an intimate experience after you have it. And so then if you were too afraid in the moment to say, can you rub my nipple slower? If that was hard in the moment, afterwards what you can say is, hey, I loved what we did. It would have been nice if you rubbed my nipple slower, and I wanted to say it, but I was afraid to say it in the moment. Right? That's a little bit easier than saying it in the moment, and it's equally valuable too. Communication. Yeah, and the last pitch I'll give for communication is if you become an expert communicator, it just makes all of your social relationships better. You learn how to interact skillfully with other people where you can bring your best self out, you can extract their best self, you can like get relationships can become to feel more collaborative and generative where like you're in a dance on the same team. And like that's what I love about life. Relationships are fun, and building communication skills makes relationships better. Cool. All right, that's what I got. I hope you got a nugget or two out of this. Peace.